Are you tired of spending your time and money chasing strategy after strategy only to discover what worked 10, 5, or even 2 years ago is not working now? Things shift fast in the online space, and if you're not keeping up, you're getting left behind. It's time for something different. Welcome to the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast, where every single episode will be jam-packed with proven, profitable strategies, behind-the-scenes secrets, and what's working now resources from industry experts and global influencers to help you scale your business, shorten your learning curve, and stand out in a crowded, noisy marketplace. And now, your host, award-winning marketing and media strategist, and international speaker, Patty Farmer.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Marketing, Media, and Money Podcast. I'm your host, Patty Farmer, and I'm looking forward to sharing today's industry expert with you. And I am really excited today because we are going to be talking about some things that not everybody talks about all the time. We're going to be talking about tracking and measuring and community and communication, how those all work together. And our expert today is really going to break it down for us. So let me tell you a little bit about him. So Adam Griggs is the CEO and founder of CLARAfi.io, a communication platform for small business owners to build and leverage trust proactively with their advisors through simplified and powerful tools. Adam's personal goal is to enhance the lives of those he touches by leveraging current relationships and networks through community and opening new possibilities to the public and beyond. And I love it. We're speaking some of my favorite topics today. So thank you so much, Adam, for being here with me.
No, I appreciate you for having me.
I love it. So let's just really talk about this right now. Let's step back a little bit, though, because I know that none of us woke up and said, oh, you know what, this is how I want to serve and support, the community. This is what I want to do for a living. There's always a little bit of a journey along the way. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how you really got to where you are and why you're doing what you're doing now?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Patty. Well, I got here after about 14 years of working with small business owners, and it wasn't an easy feat. And I kind of was thrown into the development of what is CLARAfi. So I've been working with small business owners since 2008, and that was quite a trying time. Obviously, the world was a little bit in turmoil for quite a few small businesses and the rest of the world, of course. And we had quite the storm. So I learned a lot back then working with small business owners on what their needs were. I learned that there's a very big difference between what their needs are now and what their needs are later. And I learned how quickly that can shift. So after working with them for so many years and having a good run on this growth, it's been good. It's led us down this road to create CLARAfi.
I love that. And one of the things that when I was, looking at your website and your LinkedIn, and really after the last conversation that we had where I was really, really impressed by some of the things that you're doing, I saw this theme come up over and over and over again about really who you are and what you stand for. And I really love it. And this is really what it was. It was, you're surrounded by smart people, trust them. That is a powerful statement because, that whole saying of, if you're in the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? We've all heard that, and a lot of people don't really get it. But I think that the part that is so powerful is the trust them, right? I know that I'm only as good as my network, and I am very careful about who I have in my network. I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies. So I really think this was powerful. So could you share a little bit about that and how that came to be and what do you mean by that for you?
Yeah. So when you're surrounded by smart people, it's like Steve Jobs said, right? It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do. The idea is to trust their judgment and their expertise. And it doesn't stop with just your employees and your key personnel. It's your advisors that surround you. It's your teammates. It's your friends. It's your colleagues. When you have people that you're surrounded with that you feel are walking with your story on your mission and on your journey, it's important to not circumvent your own success by trying to either outwit them or outknow them, or being too afraid to talk to them openly. I mean, that is one of the biggest pitfalls we have in business is we fail to ask meaningful questions because we're too afraid to look ignorant. And unfortunately, that's led to a lot of business owners making pretty big mistakes pretty early on that they could have avoided. So I think that's really one of the major keystones in business, is to know that you are surrounded by people that you've chosen that they're smart in their own realm. You know, they have their own perspectives.
I really like it. And I really like it when they feel like they can have a voice, right? You know, because a lot of times I know that even though I've been an entrepreneur for a very long time, I do remember back in the day when I've always been in management, and really honestly, they empower you to do this, but then you don't always really feel like you have a voice, and thus you don't really feel like you own it, right? You know? And so I think that is really important. And I know not that long ago, I was talking to somebody on my team, and I had heard somebody else say to me, this was something they were going to do. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's pretty powerful. Why am I not doing that? Right. And so I went to my team member who was in charge of that. And I said, can we do this? And she said, oh, absolutely. And my next question was, well, why aren't we? Like, you know, it was just such a no-brainer. Like I wanted to beat my head against the wall because I think I'm pretty creative and I think I'm really smart, right? And I was like, why hadn't I thought of that? Well, the reason why was because I have somebody else who is in charge of that. And so I went to her and I asked her, I said, well, why were we kind of really not doing that? And he's like, well, because you never really told me to do that. And I was like, wow. And that's when I realized that she was a great, great addition to the team, but she was sitting in the wrong seat. And I really realized that I really want to surround myself, like you said, with smart people, but I want to have, and I do have, the whole culture in your business. You have to ask yourself that if that's what you want, is I want people to speak openly. I want us, when we have our meetings, I want somebody to say, well, what about this? Have we ever done that? Let's consider this. And the best ideas will be the some choices when everybody feels like they have a voice and they can speak, rather than, oh, just because you own the company, you're the only one that's ever going to come up with anything good, right? So I think that is really important. And I really love that about trusting them to do what it is that you hired them to do. So Adam, when you do that, right, when you surround yourself by smart people, I think there's a couple of ways. Like there's surrounding yourself by smart people in your business, right? But then there's also surrounding yourself by smart people in your network, right? And stuff. And those are not the same thing. So when you are thinking about that, what is the difference for you? And are there some different things that you do in those different situations in order to surround yourself, but then to trust them? So what are a few things? Because it's pretty easy to think about it when you're talking about the people you hire. But what about just the people in your network that you're surrounding yourself with every day?
Yeah, so that's a good question. You know, with the advisors or the teammates that you hire or work with, you want to make sure you're not treating them like waiters who are just showing up, taking your order and leaving. They need to be making recommendations and building an experience around what you're doing. When it comes to your community and your network at large, you can see yourself as the main character of your story, but it'd be a pretty bland story if it was just you talking in an echo chamber. If you want to have context and real impact and really live a lifestyle that's your business, you have to surround yourself with people that not only know what you do, but understand why you do it. And I feel like if they understand why you do it and you're open about that, people won't be afraid to offer kudos, which is amazing as a business owner when you get kudos, right? You feel like you're on the right track, but they'll also offer perspective, and perspective is like art. Some people see it differently. And if they see it differently, creativity can come out of areas, just like you said, where you found this other colleague or someone who's doing something entirely different you hadn't thought about. Those perspectives can reflect on us and they can drive creativity that we never would have, come across ourselves. And that can definitely happen when you're working in a network or a community like you and I talking here today.
I absolutely agree. I have this thing in my business called the Table of 12, and it's like my own personal advisory board. right? You know, I mean, a lot of companies have advisory boards, but for me, I have my own table of 12, my own personal advisory board. And these are the people that, just like what you're saying, I surround myself by smart people. And I always like to say that this table of 12 for me are like, if I could have this ultimate dinner party, right, where I could just decide like whoever I wanted to be in those seats, you know, maybe it's Oprah, Mark Cuban, whatever the case may be. Who are those people that if you could, that you would surround yourself with them? Who would you invite? And once I decided who that was, well, you know, obviously, or maybe not, you know, Oprah's not coming to my house for dinner, right? And stuff. But once I did that, then I looked at, well, what were the characteristics of that person, why I would want them to be there? And lo and behold, once I did that, I realized that while I may not be able to invite Oprah or Mark Cuban to my house for dinner, I did already know people in my network who did have those same characteristics that I admired. And so thus I went on a quest for my table of 12 and to fill that table with the smartest people that I knew who got me and I got them. And so that is what I call my personal advisory board. And I love it. It's kind of like my own personal mastermind with them too, but not a mastermind that I facilitate, right? You know, because I facilitate those but it's not that. It's a little bit different. It's just like my own personal advisory board. I don't know how I would run my business or my life really without them. So I think that it is important, but I think that the most important thing though is really when you're talking about this, how important do you think it is to be vulnerable?
Well, in business, that's a good question. I think qualities will drive quality itself when you're talking between your community and your network. Some people will allow you to be vulnerable in a way that's meaningful, and you can have open conversations and share things that, you know, maybe holding you back, or maybe you've got a passion that's leading you in a different direction and you need to feel whether or not that that's right for you. It's hard to make decisions in business on a dime, right? And it's even harder sometimes to stick with them, especially as we've seen in the last 12 to 24 months. It's hard to stick to your guns when you've made a decision to change. So being vulnerable for a business owner is a quality that's really, it is necessary. It just depends on who and when you're being vulnerable, right? If you're in a community meetup and you've got your competitors in the room, it might not be the moment to be opening up. But if you're like you are, surrounded by your 12 select friends that are helping build your lifestyle and your brand, well, now it's time to be vulnerable. Now it's time to talk about your challenges, time to talk about your ideas.
I agree with that. So we talked a little bit about mastermind. How would you leverage your mastermind and advisors to build a more confident future and grow your business together?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. You know, it's interesting when you hire or bring about a mastermind or your advisors, you've got key players always in business, right? You've got your accounting team, or maybe you've got a coach, maybe you've got somebody who's in wealth management, risk management. You've got people from all walks of life, right? And their background is so much more in depth than you'll ever know, and their experience, because we don't tend to ask those questions, right? We ask things like, what's it going to cost? And can you do this for me? And what that does is it circumvents conversations that really matter. So when you want to leverage your advisors, you want to have conversations that go a little bit deeper. If you're going to ask a question about what you need as far as legal setup, or maybe just looking into the future for tax implications and wealth management, as a small business owner, these are important questions for you. But it's important to go a step beyond that and talk to those advisors about why. You know, why you want to make these changes right now. Are you growing a family? Are you looking to perpetuate the business? Is this something that you're building short term and you've got another passion down the road? If you have conversations that are a little more in depth and have context, you would be amazed at how often those advisors or those people that surround you have had experiences with similar outcomes with other clients or other industry professionals. And they're going to be able to offer you insights that can either challenge the way you think or can provide clarity in the direction you're taking. So I think that's probably the smartest way that you can leverage your mastermind and your advisors, is having confident conversations that are a little bit more in depth than just questions on what's it going to cost.
I agree 100%. I think that I always say, ask better questions, you'll get better answers. And to me, the question is never, what is it going to cost me? It is more like, what are the results I can expect to get from this investment, right? I never think of cost. I always think of investment. And I always really want to think about what are the results, which is really why a lot of times when people talk about their business, they want to talk a lot about, a lot of I words, right? I this, I. And the reality is that what people really want is they really want to know, okay, that's really great. But if I hire you, what are the results I can expect to get? Because it's never really about us. It's always about them. But when you're thinking about who these people are, your advisors, how do you set expectations and really communicate proactively? I know you really used that word, proactively, right? How do you communicate proactively and surpass like really your own benchmarks that we set for ourselves?
Yeah. So I think the biggest part is you got to look internally first, right? If you're going to set expectations for others, you have to set expectations for yourself. And that means challenging yourself to keep up with what you're committing to do. You have to treat those that are in your mastermind group as if they're assets and not liabilities or line items. So that's first and foremost. And when you have conversations about what your goals are, what your vision around those goals are, it's important to communicate when, how, and why you're going to execute those things so that everyone's on the same page and there's no surprises. And if you're planning to make a change, you shouldn't be hesitating to call and reach out to those advisors or individuals first and foremost, because a lot of times what we do is we think, well, I can try to figure this out on my own so I can avoid this invoice, or I can try to look this up online so I don't get charged hourly. But at that point, you're looking at them like a line item instead of an asset base. And really, your mastermind is your asset. Even if you're not engaged with them and paying them, if you're taking their time, that's valuable to them and it should be valuable to you. And then technology is evolving, right? That's one of the reasons why we exist, is because technology is so much more connected than it ever was before. We're able to communicate in real time. And often we're able to provide clarity on a very consistent basis on where we are in business and in life. And if we do that, we can set our benchmarks from the outset. And as we progress towards our goal together, collectively, right? When we start to reach those benchmarks or surpass our goals, we celebrate them together. And when people celebrate a success with you, they want more, right? They want to go and brag to their friends about this person they helped achieve success because you were part of that story. You've bought in. And if you can do that, you're going to find that proactively communicating your needs or your questions or even your new goals is a whole lot easier.
I agree. And, you said that it's okay not to know everything, right? You can just embrace that trust, right? While you're overcoming that fear of ignorance. We don't have to know everything. That's why we surround ourselves with such smart people and trust them.
Yeah, it's very important to trust somebody more than just taking their word for it, right? If you're going to bring in somebody in your mastermind or in your advisory group and their expertise is in a particular background like legal or risk management or whatever it is, you want to trust them because that's not what you're in business to do. You're not in business to find out what they do, how they do it, and why they do it, right? Yes, they need to provide you some education. That's where conversation comes in. But at the end of the day, when you have a good feeling that you're going to work together proactively, they know their side of the table, you know yours. Your job is to build your vision and your business. If you can work on building your business and your vision and create impact like you want, whether it be a startup in fashion and eco-friendly services or in creating a community where people can see how to market themselves better in the now instead of in the past, like what we got here. These are your passions. So nobody wants to stay up reading legalese or risk management journals or try to read the IRS tax code. And I got to be honest, if somebody reached out to me and said that they were doing that and I was your accountant or I was your attorney or whatever, I'd probably be taken back a little bit. I'd be a little offended that you don't trust me or that you might think that my degree and my experience is worth as much as I think it is, So you have to be careful to know that when you're embracing your advisors or your mastermind, you have to be careful that you're also embracing them through trust and don't fear ignorance. If there is a question that's sticking out to you and you really want to know the answer, ask them. It's okay. It's not like they're going to be cloak and dagger and hiding their information from you. They're in business with you or they're in this journey with you because they have something of value to offer. And trust me, it will reflect back. They're going to love the conversation and you're going to find out more than you ever wanted to know.
Absolutely. And I've heard you say that opportunity is a treasure hunt. Like, I love that, right? And I believe it too. But what do you mean by that when you say that?
Yeah. So one of the things we've found over the years when working with small business owners is everybody's very much tunnel vision on their own mission and their own drive, right? You're in the trenches of entrepreneurship. Every day you've got challenges and struggles. You've got to make sales. You've got to retain client loyalty. You've got to build your brand. So while you're doing that and you have tunnel vision, you're working as hard as you can down your line of sight, you might be missing opportunities. There might be things happening in the industry that you're not aware of, or upcoming changes in technology, things that might make your life easier. There may be a new powerful network that you could become part of. And it's hard to really lift your head up sometimes and look for those opportunities proactively. So it's like a treasure hunt to me, right? Sometimes you come across an opportunity that is just solid gold. And if you were trying to cover a 100-mile radius by yourself, it would take a long time. But if you had your 12 power players or your community, your mastermind working with you, well, their perspectives can fan out and look at all different, areas. They work with other people in the same industry as you. They work with other entrepreneurs. They see and hear things that are going on in the world of small business, in the world of, active entrepreneurship. And when they see those things and you have these conversations, they're going to be able to find those opportunities and bring them to you. And it is like splitting the splendor, right? You guys found this treasure together and everybody's going to get richer together. And I don't necessarily mean monetarily. I mean experience, impact, availability. These things matter.
They absolutely do. So you said a little bit earlier something that really stood out to me. You said that the growth of a business in real time. And I think that's really important because a lot of times people really don't see it. And I think that is really important. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what do you mean? And how does your company really, how do you do that? And what is it that you can help people to do in real time?
Yeah. So a lot of times when we've engaged our masterminds, we're working in a reactive environment where once a year or twice a year, we're having conversations. And usually what comes out of those conversations are coulda, woulda, shouldas, right? Here's what you could have done, should have done, or would have done better. And here's why, which isn't bad. In the past, it's allowed us to build and learn and create better momentum moving forward. But we're so connected now with the availability of seeing how a business is performing, whether it be through, just their general sales and marketing campaigns, their labor force. We saw that last year. Things change drastically from week to week, month to month, and sometimes daily. And having a conversation in the now allows you to make a decision that can keep your business open. It can retain your employees and your key personnel, and it can actually build trust. We had a client last year that was a large security firm, and 90% of their business was events. And unfortunately, events were canceled entirely for the year. And when you have the rug pulled out from under you, and you've got 200 plus employees that you've got to worry about, as a business owner, you don't want to have a conversation at the end of the year about what you could have done to maintain and retain those employees. So what we actually do at CLARAfi is we allow people to track their business metrics in a very simple fashion rather than overwhelming them. And it just allows them and their advisors to see in real time how the business is actually performing and what the immediate needs are. Not getting in the weeds too much, not getting overwhelmed with data. It's just very simple and very visually friendly. And what that allowed them to do was we saw that their labor force was, relatively consistent over the years, and they knew exactly what they needed to do to go and get support from the PPP and the SBA. And doing that allowed them, a couple months of trying to find new clients, new contracts, and new opportunities. But the powerful part of that was we talked in the proactive. They salvaged most of their employees as a relationship. The employees stuck with them because they trusted that they would have a job and consistency. And when an employee feels that way, that they're taken care of, they buy in and the loyalty gets stronger and the company does better. And that security firm bounced back They actually picked up quite a few larger contracts that they had not been willing to pursue before because they were overwhelmed with the events. And now they've got something that can survive any economy. And it wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have been talking in a proactive, manner of watching their business and seeing what the actual impacts are now, as opposed to 6 months ago or a year ago.
And I would think that would be really important too when you're measuring and tracking against projected goals, right? So, it's not just that, but when you have these projections, you're right. This last year really kind of did hit everybody hard with what happened that they weren't expecting. But when we forecast and we have projected goals, waiting to see if you hit them and just hoping you do is really not good business, right?
Absolutely. And it impacts more than just your ego, right? It's not just your pride. If you project goals a specific way, you might be paying out ahead in taxes, and you might be paying too much. You may be paying too much for insurance and risk management. There are things that should be dialed down to make sure the business survives today so that we can all grow tomorrow.
Yes, absolutely. And a few minutes ago, you said something I really love. You were talking about powerful organizations. And I really love that because I am all about that. And I'm involved in several of them. And I can't even imagine being in business and not having them be part of my business. But I know that you are actually involved in a powerful organization, pretty much that, or network, whatever you want to call it. But your OpenWeStand, let's talk a little bit about that, because I think that's pretty powerful. It's how we actually connected. Tell us a little bit about that, how you got started with that, really. And it is just so powerful. I love it so much. So tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, the OpenWeStand movement was actually started in early 2020, probably about April or May, because businesses were being forced to close. And we're talking brick and mortar, right? So a lot of businesses were trying to figure out ways to adapt or pivot or evolve. And a lot of Main Street businesses just could not. And the news was just very overwhelmingly negative. And there's nothing to be said bad about knowing what's going on in the world, but being overwhelmed with the same thing that's just negative over and over again, that can incite fear inside of yourself. And it can actually, unfortunately, circumvent your own success. So last year, about June time, I started doing videos once a week where we would have an entrepreneur or an advisor or an advocate come on, and they would share their story. And the story would just be one of, how they're overcoming their challenges, how they're coping, how they're adapting, how they're innovating. We shared stories of people that were trying to start new directions and new businesses. We've shared stories about people that stuck to their business and how they're surviving and how they're leveraging their community to make sure that they're providing value and they're going to be there when they're able to reopen. And it took off more than we thought it would. We started just kind of doing these on the fly. And here we are almost a year later, and we've gone basically every week with a new story. And it's just very empowering and very positive to see these business owners that are just willing to open up and share their story, not just of the success they've had, but how they've gotten there, how they've been challenged, how they've nearly given up. Some of the greatest have come very close to not being one of the greatest. So we just love sharing those stories. So I appreciate you asking that, Patty.
And that community is a community of thousands, which I think is really powerful, but it really goes to show you the power of story, right? When we get to be vulnerable and you share your story of, oh, this almost didn't work, this is what happened. But then there's triumph, right? People who actually, pivoted. And I think that people want to know that, because on one hand, when things aren't going so good, right, and you're in survive, not thrive, right? It's nice to know you're not the only person there. And then when you're hearing these tremendous stories that people are sharing in times just like you are, and how they were able to thrive and turn things around and what kind of things they did, it really can make you feel, especially when we've been being so isolated, right? To be able to say, oh, well, there is something I can do, right? And I think that that's where the power of people are, right? Because really the opportunities, I always like to say that ops, people always say ops, OPP, right? Is other people's people. And that's the greatest op of all, right? And the best way to promote yourself is by promoting other people. right? And so I think that when people can do that and they can be a part of a community where it isn't just where they're getting sucked in and overwhelmed and they're like, oh my gosh, like I don't know what to do, all these things are happening, but they're surrounded by people who've overcome, who have, asked questions, who've pivoted. I mean, I think that is really important where we are, and that is really taking service and support to the next level, because I truly believe that we always should be leading with contribution. Compensation will follow, but lead with contribution. And I really feel, Adam, like you are really doing that. And I'm, like we're connected on LinkedIn and I am seeing it every single day, how you are showing up and leaning into that. And I say kudos to you for that. So thank you so much for providing that opportunity and, just that space for people.
Yeah, I appreciate you for saying that. It's been fun to watch the group grow. And I think you're right. People are looking for positivity. And a lot of times they're just afraid or overwhelmed by other people's challenges seeming, not so grandiose. And I think people need to remember we're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats. So when we're sharing these stories weekly, there's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of background. Some of them are only silver linings. Some of them are success, and some are just people holding on. And that's powerful that people are able to share that openly and find support in a community like that, which is why it grows. So thank you, Patty.
I love that. So Adam, tell us a little bit before we start wrapping up. I really want to know, for CLARAfi, are there certain type of businesses that you really love to work with? Are there certain types of businesses that are your ideal client?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Well, CLARAfi was built specifically for small business. So we're looking at, a few hundred employees or less generally. And the reason that we built it that way was because we wanted to make the service that CLARAfi is, which is a tech platform, and it's more of an ecosystem for communication. We wanted to make that available to small businesses because the top 1%, they already have that. They've got, engineering teams that are building things out for them that are proprietary, that cost millions, and small business owners just don't have that. So we wanted to give them an environment where they could find impact, build trust, and leverage each other in a meaningful way that wasn't going to break the bank. So we like to work with all kinds of industries. We've got people from security professionals, like you heard about earlier, to contractors, restaurants, store owners. We even have home health agencies. So everybody wants to measure their success, but it's hard to measure your success when you know that you've got to pay, a big dollar a head just to start measuring that.
That is so absolutely true. So I know, Adam, that people are going to want to connect with you. How can they do that?
Yeah, the best way to do that is just go to our website. It's CLARAFI, CLARAFI.io.
And you didn't even come empty-handed. You came bearing a gift, which I think is fabulous. And I really love this gift. So tell everybody about the gift that you have for them.
Yeah, so we built a survival guide, and we did this by asking small business owners what they wanted to hear and see now to help support them. So the survival guide offers quick links to things like the PPP and the rules around that and forgiveness, the CARES Act. We included some stuff for mental workplace support. I think that's important. I think that's an area that's often overlooked. So anybody that would like that, we'll share that guide with you. And if you'd like to, we can put that in the comments.
Absolutely. We will make sure that we have it in the show notes so everybody can grab it. That would be really great. So this is the part of the show where I like to call it open mic, my version of social karaoke, where I turn the mic over to our guest. This show is the Marketing, Media, and Money Show. And so we really want you to share with us, what is your number one marketing, media, or money strategy?
Yeah, so number one right now would be you have to serve communities with context and consistency. If you do that, it'll give you visibility and credibility. And the reason you need to do it with context is you want to talk about things that your audience wants to hear, not necessarily what you want to talk about. And if you're consistent in giving them what they want to hear and ideas that surround their needs, they're going to buy in, they're going to follow you, and it will be meaningful enough that it'll drive your visibility, give you credibility, and it'll ultimately grow your business. So make sure you serve your communities first and do it with consistency and the right context.
That makes a lot of sense. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being here with us today, Adam. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Patty, I appreciate you having me.
And we want to say thank you to our sponsor, the Exacta Corporation, developer of the Family Organizer Plus platform. For more information, check them out at exactacorp.com. And if you would like a simple answer to the question, where should I focus my time and energy to attract high qualified ideal clients? Take the Marketing Media Money Assessment, and in 3 minutes or less, you'll know where you're excelling, where you can make a few changes, and what steps you need to take to achieve massive results. Go to www.m3bizquiz.com. And thank you so much for joining us on the Marketing Media Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, and I'm sure you did, please subscribe and review the podcast on your favorite listening platform. So again, thank you so much, Adam, for being here with me today. To the audience, thank you all so much for showing up week after week to listen in with us and be a part of our community. Make it a phenomenal day. And remember, if your day isn't phenomenal, you have the power to change it.
Thank you for joining us today on the Marketing, Media, and Money podcast. To shorten your learning curve even more, make sure to grab your free copy of the Marketing, Media, and Money magazine at www.marketingmediamoney.com. I promise your business will thank you.